Good evening, Mr. Callis. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you couple of hours here after your lecture. It was mind-blowing and eye-opening, even for me, the guy who has been reading and investigating that subject a lot, but everything was just mind-blowing. Now, the reason why I'm asking you a couple of questions tonight is to introduce your ideas, your thoughts about that area. We're talking about Eastern Anatolia or Asia Minor. We don't like to use the word Turkey, you know what. So that area, Asia Minor, is full of antiquities, full of unexplored and unexplained ancient architectural monuments. What made you go into that subject years ago, sir?
What made me go into this subject and explore these monuments was the fact that I recognised that something important had taken place in eastern Anatolia around the area of Lake Bar at the end of the last ice age. There were so many firsts for humanity, different inventions, everything from agriculture to animal husbandry to metallurgy to the first beer, the first wine, the first rectilinear buildings, and images of, the bird shamans and things. That there's something was going on here which made me suppose that we were dealing with some kind of lost civilization and a shamanic elite that had come into the area, taken over what was going on. And the result of this was the creation of these incredible monuments. But the thing is that as I was writing this, as far back as 1995, we knew nothing about Göbekli Tepe. Yes. The first spades were going into the ground as I was writing all this in my book, The Ashes of Ancient. And it wasn't until the year 2000 they released information to do with Göbekli Tepe in a German magazine for the first time. It was like, here you have evidence, a smoking gun of a lost civilization, yes, right in the very area that I said that you would find it. Yeah. And of course, we now know that Göbekli Tepe is simply part of a huge culture. It's not a primitive civilization that had existed in this area as far back as 10,000 BC. The archaeologists call it Ashen Templar. These stony hills, the stony hill culture. They were incredibly sophisticated, not only building places like Göbekli Tepe and Karahan, but also at least another 10, maybe 11 other sites, all with T-shaped villas. Many of them have yet to be excavated. So, this all blended into what I already knew. And the other important thing is that the Bible tells us that paradise, Eden, was located where the four great rivers took their rise. Two of those rivers are the Euphrates and the Tigris. The third one, which is the Gihon, was probably the Arxes River, which begins in the Armenian highlands, that flows eastward into the Caspian Sea. The fourth river is almost certainly the Great Zal, which also rises in eastern Turkey and flows through the Zagros Mountains until eventually it empties into the Tigris. And this was recognized as one of the four rivers of paradise, known as the Pishon, as early as the 1st century by the Syrian Church. Yes. So I think this is a very, very old tradition. In other words, the four rivers of paradise all take their rise in eastern Turkey, but what obviously in the past were the part of Armenia.
Yes.
And what's so interesting is that a number of Armenian scholars, as I bring out in my book, actually, have been trying to tell people for years, decades even, that this is where civilization began. But of course, unfortunately, for whatever reason, those voices have not been heard. So it was up to me to try and bring this out in my books like Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, and later books like Cygnus Key. And I think that it's important that people know that a number of Armenian scholars were saying this a while ago, particularly when the most common theory about the location of the Garden Eden is that it was somewhere in the area of Basra in Lower Iraq, because this is where the Tigris and the Euphrates essentially come together. And that presumably there was another couple of rivers around somewhere, and that this is where Eden was. And this is a very late addition to our understanding. This probably came up around the 15th, 16th century.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of theologians and scholars to this day still believe that. Yes, I can understand the frustration of the Armenian scholars trying to say, no, it happened in Armenia.
They're fighting an impossible war.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hancock yesterday mentioned about that so-called academia. It's like, I don't want to call it mafia, but it sounds like that, you know. They have their mindset about something. They don't want to allow any new ideas to come in. And that is what holds this science back in its root. You have to open the doors and let everybody come in and give their ideas and their thoughts and do their diggings. What if Klaus Schmidt didn't do that?
Well, if Klaus Schmidt had not discovered Göbekli Tepe in 1994, that whole hillside was going to be used as a quarry to create the new road between Şanlıurfa and Mardin. So thank God that he did find it.
I have read about Edgar Cayce's memoirs that he has left behind. He has even worked at Chicago University archaeologist to go to southern Turkey and do the diggings, because he predicted that there were a lot of old stuff in there. And they hadn't done that in 40s and 50s. Eventually, accidentally in 1990s, they did that. Some Kurdish shepherds or whatever, they found those drugs and reported. So thank God, again, for this beautiful accident. And I don't want to hold you so long, sir. You said beautifully whatever I would like you to say. My final question is this. Is there anything this Armenian current scholars of the day can do, can push any direction to help you folks out? You are in front of the battle. They are far behind. What they can do to assist you?
The way that Armenian scholars can assist me and obviously my colleagues and the archaeologists that are working on these sites is to look for evidence of this same culture in Armenia today.
Yes.
Look for T-shaped pillars, look for carvings that could be similar to those found at places like Karahan and at Göbekli Tepe. You see, we know in Armenia there's Portasam, there's Portasam. And in this way, they can show that this culture was more widespread.
Of course it was.
I mean, obviously we have sites like Karaguj,
Yes.
which could go back to as much as 5,500 BC, but there's still a gap between there and the culture of Göbekli Tepe, which goes back to 9,000 BC. So we need archaeologists and scholars, prehistorians, and just searchers in Armenia to look for similar evidence. I mean, it's my belief that you're going to find stuff around the area of Mount Ararat.
Of course.
I mean, what you do have there, for instance, is what we call cup marks or cupules, which are like these circular holes that are bored like cups into the rock. And they're found in the area of Mount Ararat. And we find those same cup marks or cupules at Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and various other of the Taş Tepe'li sites. This could be an indication that we should be looking somewhere in the area of Mount Ararat.
What I have seen myself with my own eyes, in 1985 we went to Turkey to Mount Ararat to climb the mountain. We were not successful, we were not allowed, but in 86 we did climb. But what I saw on the way down later on, there are areas where you can see round holes made up by people, so they could build chariot wheels in those little circles. The width is just as the wheel would be. They used to do this all in the rocks. I mean, they did for any purpose, for any purpose, for anything.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, the evidence is going to be there somewhere of this culture. I do not believe for a second that the Taş Tepe'li culture was confined to the area of Şanlıurfa.
Yes.
It clearly was elsewhere as well. We need to find those stepping stones out of Anatolia or into it, because I believe that the founders of the Taş Tepe'li culture came originally via the Caucasus from
Yes.
the Russian steppe and probably beyond that into Siberia, Mongolia.
Yes.
But they would have passed through Armenia. And therefore, if we're looking for the earliest form of this culture, we could well be looking somewhere in the area of Armenia and, of course, Georgia. And it would be my recommendation, my intuition, that you should be looking also in the area of Lake Seven. That's somewhere that I intuitively feel you're also going to find evidence of this culture.
So I really appreciate your time and your knowledge on the subject and your explanation of the subject. But I want to add at the end something that's very funny, though. Every Armenian knows this phrase. We call Armenia a museum under open sky. Everywhere you go and you take a shovel and you dig somewhere, a square foot, you'll find something. It's no accident that area was called the museum under the open sky. That's why everywhere you dig, you find something. And these civilizations come and go in that area, in Asia Minor, Anatolia, whatever we call it, doesn't matter really. It contains tens of 20, 30,000 years of human and pre-human history. I really appreciate your time, sir, and I wish you all the best in your research in the future.
Thank you very much.
And thanks from my bottom of my heart from Armenian viewers of. Thank you very much, dear friends, for watching us.